Not long ago, General Cavoli told the Senate that Putin won't stop in Ukraine, meaning the US and NATO are facing some serious challenges. But is the US military actually preparing for a potential conflict with Russia?
Our allies are investing in defense at a rate we haven't seen since the Cold War, a 40% increase overall since February of 2022.
The reason? Russia's army is grinding forward into its fourth year in Ukraine and has no intention of stopping.
Clearly, he's not yet been satisfied with the amount of Ukraine that he's taken over, because he's continuing to try to fight forward.
Putin's plan is to take all of Ukraine, then pause, regroup, and prepare to strike America's NATO allies. Why should Americans care? Because since the Cold War, Europe has been the first line of defense for the United States. NATO's grand strategy was always to hold off Soviet forces in Europe, fight a defensive war, wait for US reinforcements to cross the Atlantic, and then crush the enemy.
But he certainly is interested in controlling the nations that are in his immediate neighborhood, by whatever means necessary. And we've seen that demonstrated consistently over time.
So far, Ukraine has killed or wounded around 923,000 Russian troops. They've destroyed Russian armor, sunk ships, and hit logistics hubs. But despite these insane losses, Russia remains a strategic threat to the US. Here's why.
Very important for me to add, however, that they have never stopped having their strategic capabilities. Their nuclear submarines, their long-range aviation, their cyber, their space, all of that is alive and well and largely unaffected by the war in Ukraine.
According to the Federation of American Scientists, Russia holds 5,977 nuclear warheads. Of those, around 1,500 are deployed and ready to launch at a moment's notice. It's the largest nuclear arsenal on the planet, and even the US military doesn't outmatch them in this area.
That provide the biggest threat to the United States.
Yeah, their nuclear arsenal.
What about their cyber capabilities?
I believe their nuclear arsenal poses a bigger threat.
Russia's second biggest threat to the US and NATO, after nukes, is the sheer number of troops and gear it can throw into a fight.
Conventionally, their strategic advantage continues to be mass that they can put in direct proximity to NATO forces that challenges us to respond in time across the spaces required.
Let's break that down. Europe's NATO forces number about 1.5 million troops. The entire US military stands at around 1.3 million. To match that, Putin's trying to bulk up his infantry. And let's be real, the number you're about to hear probably isn't final. It'll only go up. And don't forget about China, sitting quietly with its 2 million strong standing army.
They have very extensive modernization plans and expansion plans. The Russians, about a year and a half ago, announced an intention to grow their armed forces to 1.5 million, up from 900,000.
Russia's mobilization reserve? Roughly 20 million men. That's a massive pool of potential conscripts. So if the Kremlin calls up more troops, guess where they'll end up?
But that modernization program is intended to go right back and challenge NATO on the borders of NATO.
Your likes and subscriptions tell YouTube our channel is worth watching. Tap subscribe to support us. People are Putin's ace in the hole. Yes, Russia's war in Ukraine has dented their offensive capability. But what's really stopping Putin from training and equipping a fresh wave of infantry? You already know the answer.
They have manpower available. They demonstrate the willingness to conscript it, and it doesn't take that long to reconstitute the size of their old force or even to increase it.
And despite losing thousands of tanks and armored vehicles, Russia's defense industry hasn't collapsed. Not even close. Why? Because of leftover Soviet stockpiles and an economy running full tilt on a war footing.
They still have equipment and storage that they could pull out and renovate, and they have increased their ability to produce legacy hardware, tanks and armored personnel carriers, and things like that.
And let's not forget Russia's so-called friends. Iran is sending drones. North Korea is shipping gear, shells, and even troops. And then there's the big panda in the room, China. Quiet, patient, and generous when it comes to paying for Russian oil and gas.
But there has been contributions. Some of them have been indirect, absorbing much of Russian-sanctioned oil exports and gas exports. They have been able to continue to provide funds that have enabled Russia to continue to build their military.
So what's the payoff? Russia's allies get cash, tech, and battlefield experience. But what does the US get for backing Ukraine? That's the question both senators and ordinary Americans are asking. General Cavoli has a clear answer.
We gave them radars to defend themselves. They give us back invaluable data that we're able to study. So that's only one example, sir.
Thanks to American Patriot systems, Ukraine has taken out 20 Russian K-8 47 Kinzhal missiles, some of the newest air-launched ballistic missiles in Russia's arsenal. And yes, it was done entirely with American tech. Ukraine also shot down 2 hypersonic Zircon missiles, which, according to the Kremlin, were supposed to be impossible to intercept. Well, turns out they weren't. Then came the Su-34s and Su-35s. Gone. And the real prize? A Russian A-50 AWACS plane. These things usually fly far outside combat zones and are almost impossible to take down. But Ukraine's air defenders basically said, "Hold my beer." The result? Russia's most expensive single loss since the sinking of the cruiser Moskva. Every single intercept is studied in detail by US specialists to upgrade America's own air defenses. So far, Ukraine is the only place on Earth where this much advanced Russian tech has been destroyed by American weapons.
At an unclassified level, we were able to collect an awful lot of information about adversary rockets and missiles during the course of the conflict in Ukraine. A lot of that is given to us by our Ukrainian colleagues.
But Ukrainians aren't just using American weapons. They're winning battles with their own. Naval drones like Sea Baby and Magura forced the Russian fleet to retreat from Sevastopol all the way to Novorossiysk. That puts a massive dent in Russian logistics and makes it way harder to keep fighting in the Black Sea. Ukrainians didn't stop at just building sea drones. They strapped missiles to them and started hunting down Russian aircraft patrolling the Crimean coast, and they actually shot a few of them down. A Magura V-7 drone launched 2 AIM-9 missiles and took out 2 Russian Su-30 fighters. So far, no other army in the world has pulled off anything like that.
They have given us all a view of a future where unmanned surface vehicles, basically sea drones, have the potential to wage conflict at a large scale against a traditional manned navy.
While the US is still studying naval combat in the Black Sea, the French are already testing their own version, the Magellan. Sound familiar? Now picture the face of a Chinese Marine during a Taiwan operation, spotting the same kind of sea drone that shredded the Russian Navy in the Black Sea.
They have had some help from us, from our European allies, but I should stress that a great deal of their expertise is indigenous. It's grown with their own engineers, their own lessons learned. It's remarkable.
Ukrainians figured out how to make simple, cheap, but deadly weapons. Like FPV drones, they test them right in the trenches, tweak the design, and send them back into battle. These used to be DIY drones built with off-the-shelf Chinese parts. Now, they fly on fiber optics. That means they can cut through Russian electronic jamming and strike with precision.
The Ukrainians have proven especially adept at putting engineers down at the lowest level, observing what the soldiers do with the equipment, making modifications and putting it right back in the fight. It's a big advance.
This leap in tech happened because Ukraine was running out of artillery shells. To hold the front, they had to improvise, and fast.
They are producing drones like most countries produce ammunition in massive quantities for expenditure.
Today, Ukraine builds small FPVs, heavy bombers, and long-range kamikaze drones. And that experience? It could save not just US money, but American lives.
They've become the world experts in one-way drones, and they are very, very good at it. They're also very good at countering it. Our ability to learn from them is an important thing.
The US Army is now rolling out FPVs the Ukrainian way, where every brigade has its own operators scouting, identifying, and destroying targets.
I'd refer you respectfully to General George, the Chief of Staff of the Army, who's working very hard to distribute smaller drones at the lowest level and to proliferate them across formations.
General George is already running his own program to make sure American soldiers can operate drones and counter aerial threats in what's known as the kill zone. In future wars, those skills will be just as essential as an M16 was in Iraq.
He's got a program that he calls Transformation in Contact, where he uses brigades that are deployed either into the Pacific or into Europe to accelerate his distribution and his deployment of these drones.
And while US troops are learning the modern battlefield and how to counter new threats, Ukrainians are buying them time. That's exactly why, according to General Cavoli, the U.S. must keep supporting Ukraine militarily.
Continue to provide them the defensive mechanisms to prevent the heinous attacks that we've
Provide
seen.
more intelligence?
Intelligence, air defense weapon systems, and then artillery systems and ammunition.
Cavoli also recommends keeping U.S. troops in Europe right where they are. Pulling back could send the wrong message.
We have periodically reviewed the force structure at both the military level and the policy level, and I have consistently recommended throughout that period to maintain the forces we surged forward.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine forced the U.S. and NATO to rethink warfare on the continent. Now the alliance is preparing for a high-end conflict, one where Russia might use every weapon it has, including those banned by the Geneva Conventions.
After years of underinvestment, too many years, our allies are finally optimizing the alliance for high-end warfighting. And within NATO, we now have the plans, the forces, the command and control, and we have the focus to meet that mission.
Thankfully, the Pentagon is taking the threat seriously. It's strengthening troop readiness and helping frontline allies rearm and retrain.
We've increased combined training and exercises, and we've been accelerating European modernization and readiness.
What topics should we cover next? Drop your ideas in the comments. We'll pick from the most liked ones.